Hello everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the creation of this underwater scene that has a jellyfish on it. I've turned it into a card and I'm using a new stamp set from Trinity Stamps, which I just fell in love with when I saw it. I sort of had this vision in my mind of exactly how I wanted it to be, and so I knew I just had to play with it. So the stamp set I'm using is called Jellyfish Wish, and I really wanted to create an underwater scene, predominantly blue, and I wanted there to be light at the top of the water and coming down to the depths where it was much darker. So that's exactly what I've created. I'm starting out with some watercolor paper. This is Fabriano Artistico Extra White watercolor paper, and I've taped it to a hardboard. Now the first thing I'm going to do is use some drawing gum or masking fluid, and I'm going to be putting droplets of this on so that they will later become bubbles. Now, I didn't go into this underwater scene blind. I didn't go into it blindly. I actually Googled watercolor underwater scene. I think that's what I Googled. And an amazing YouTube video popped up from Anna's Creative Art. She's also Anna N Studio at Instagram. I'll have her link down below in the video description. In her video, she has this amazing process of watercoloring an underwater scene, and it looked so similar to what I had in my head that I decided that I would kind of follow along with her tutorial and kind of create my own version of it. So that's exactly what I'm showing you today. All the credit goes to Anna. She's amazing. She has a beautiful Instagram account with so many beautiful, spectacular watercolor paintings. So please go check her out. Like I said, links are down below. So the first thing that she did in her tutorial, which there's no actual instruction, it's just music, so it's really fun to watch. But the first thing she did was she added this masking fluid over the top of kind of a center area to create this kind of column of bubbles that goes up to the top of the water. And I knew I wanted to have a similar look, but I wanted to preserve an area for my grading. So after my masking fluid was dry, I removed some of those bubbles and the kind of the splatter that I didn't want. So I just removed those with an adhesive eraser, or you can use your fingers to kind of rub that away. The next thing I did was a wash of clean water over the entire surface. And I'm going to be dropping in color onto the wet watercolor paper. So this is called a wet on wet technique. And when you're bringing in color onto already wet paper, it softens all the edges. And that's exactly the look that we want for underwater. So I'm using two different colors of blue. Turns out that Anna was using my most favorite paints in the world, Magello Mission Gold. So I'm using the same paints. I'm not sure if I used the same colors that she did, but these are just two of my favorite blue shades. So I first started doing kind of these flicking motions and streaks and brush strokes going up into that center area. But I want to preserve the white area at the top because that's what's going to make it look like there's a light source coming down into the water. So you notice that there was those radiating streaks coming from that center area. And they're not coming straight down, they're actually angled and then coming in toward the center. So of course you could absolutely change this kind of orientation and have it come straight down, but I wanted to have that very dramatic look of kind of like that center radiating line. So then Anna did some like darker blue kind of squiggles near the bottom, and I just think this looks so cool. Now, I have never actually been scuba diving myself. The closest I've ever been is snorkeling. But of all the pictures I've seen of underwater scenes, sometimes you get these kind of like murky, cloudy areas where it's kind of a suggestion of maybe seaweed or other sea life or anything like that. I think it's just really neat. Just kind of have these kind of odd looking squiggles. And then to help these bubble areas stand out, I've taken a darker blue and just dropped it in right where those spots of drawing gum or masking fluid are. Anna did the same in her tutorial, and it looks spectacular. So I'm just really following along what she shows in her video. I added some more darker streaks in here. And then I wanted to have an even darker area near the bottom. So I actually grabbed a darker shade. I think I grabbed Payne's Gray, and I added that in at the bottom. And I wish I would have swapped it out for a different color. In hindsight, I think this would have looked better if I used a very, very dark purple or mixed in a dark purple with the blue just to get that more intense shade. But, it all worked out in the end. This is a very forgiving background. You're really just making little squiggle shapes everywhere. I think it looks really, really neat. The main thing you want to remember if you're trying to recreate this is try to preserve a lot of that white up at the top so that it really does look like there's light coming down from the top of the scene. After everything was dry, make sure everything is dry. You don't want to try to remove the masking fluid when your paper's still wet, because then you have the chance of tearing your paper. So make sure everything's dry and then remove the masking fluid, or the drawing gum in my case. Drawing gum is just the brand or the type of masking fluid that I used. So I've removed my watercolor paper from my hardboard, and now I'm going to start into all the stamping. And I'm going to be doing some heat embossing, so I want to make sure that everything is super, super dry so that my powder doesn't stick to any areas that might have just some residual moisture left. So I hit that with my heat tool, and then I put my watercolor background in my Misty stamp positioning tool. I then placed the jellyfish stamp and also the greeting right over the area where I wanted it to be. I'm going to stamp both of these at the same time. And because I'm going to heat emboss them, I'm going to prep the paper area with an anti-static powder tool. This is also going to help prevent powder from sticking to areas where I don't want it or where I haven't stamped. I'm inking up the images in Versamark ink, and then I'm actually going to stamp these twice. And I stamped them twice so that I could get a really good impression on this very textured watercolor paper. So I'm stamping that twice, and then I'm going to apply or sprinkle on some white embossing powder. The embossing powder I'm using today is from Brutus Monroe, and this is the color Alabaster. It's their bright white embossing powder. And this goes on really, really smoothly, but I did want to make sure I had all the powder tapped off any of the excess. So I did actually take it to my garbage can and tapped it really strongly from the back. I then used my heat tool to melt all that powder, and then I used a rag just to wipe off any of the powder that was still sticking around, any of that anti-static powder that I had used earlier. So I'm going to be cutting this down to be slightly smaller than a 5x7 card front. So I'm using Waffle Flowers A7 layers dies, and I just ran that through my die cutting machine, and then I'm left with this edge to edge design. Now, I loved all the bubbles, but I wanted to add even more detail there, or maybe even some shimmer and shine. So I actually grabbed 3 different shades of mica watercolor paints from Yuli Watercolors. I'll have the exact colors I've used linked down below in the supplies, but I first thought I would splatter these onto my project, but then I realized I wanted a little bit more control. I didn't want any of this paint covering up the greeting or the jellyfish too much. So I actually just, took some time and painstakingly painted on some dots. Now I've got these 2 embellishment mixes from Trinity. I was considering using both or maybe just one. I decided to go with this one that looks like clear iridescent bubbles. I thought it would just bring a really fun 3-dimensional element to my card. So I first adhered my watercolor panel using foam adhesive to my card front. This is a 5x7 card front. And then I placed my bubble embellishments. I think I just used like 5 or 6, not very many. And I picked them up and glued them down using some Honeybee Precision Glue. And this glue actually dries clear. So even though it looks white underneath these embellishments right now, you'll see in the final photos that it's actually very clear. And this is going to finish up the card. Now, this is a very monochromatic card, mostly blue and white. You've got some little pops of some green shades in there in the bubbles. But for the most part, it's very monochromatic. It's a very forgiving watercolor background to create. I highly encourage you to try it. The wet on wet technique works so well, and it actually came together fairly quickly. I think I did this entire card in about 40 minutes. It was really quick and easy. So everything I've used today is listed down below in the video description, including the stamp set from Trinity, the paints, the embellishments, everything I've used. I hope you'll check that supply list out. And thank you so much for joining me today. I'll catch you guys in another video very soon.